Ladies and gentlemen, it is April the 3rd. Okie dokie. The bonnet that you may or may not be able to see, no, you can't see the bonnet. The bonnet that's just at the top of the viewpoint there is pointed in the direction of a town called San Carlos. It's on the other side of the mountain from Bacolod, on the island of Negros Occidental, which is about halfway down the length of the Philippines. Keeping in mind now that there's 7,000 islands over here. 7,000 islands, so it's likely that God woke up one day and said, fuck it, I'll just drink a bottle of whiskey for breakfast, and then I'll crack on with this little planet Earth project I'm working on. So he was a little bit tipsy when he designed the Philippines and Negros. So Negros is a grand old island, and I live on it. So I won't hear a bad word said about it, right? So San Carlos is on the other side, and then what you have in San Carlos is a couple of boats, and the boats will head over to Cebu. Cebu is probably the most popular island on this side of the Philippines. Beautiful views over to my left there. You might get a shot, you might get a look at it when you're you might get a look at it when we take one of these turns, or I'll see if I can find a place to stop. So it's 2-something in the day, and yeah, Cebu. Okay, well, like, I'm not mad about the city, to be honest. You know, the first time I arrived in Cebu, I had left Australia only a couple of months before. Me and a Corkonian, a man by the name of Clancy, we were navigating our way up via Bali. So we were over in Bali, in Kuta, Lombok, the Gili Islands, and after that then, so we flew from Kuta over to the Philippines. When we got to the Philippines, we had spent the previous week or two in picture-perfect surroundings in the Bali. So get to Cebu, and it's just this horrible, grey, dilapidated place with loads of beggars on the street, really run down, you know. And we checked into a hotel, wherever the taxi driver left us. We would have got off the plane and we would have said to the taxi driver, just bring us to the place where there's a bit of crack. Bring us to the Cebu equivalent to Khao San Road. I mean, that's what I often said when I was drinking back then, you know. Bring us to the bloody Bali equivalent to Khao San Road. Bring me to the Taipei equivalent to Khao San Road. The place where everybody gets wrecked. Bring me there. So me and Clancy checked into a hotel around the corner from this Irish bar. And I remember there was two lads who were into the mining in Papua New Guinea. And like many people who were working over in Australia at the time, they do the 4 weeks on and 1 week off kind of thing. And what would happen is that the people would work frantically for 4 weeks, and then they get 1 week off, and they'd have a big massive paycheck because they get paid something stupid when they're in Australia. So these guys were on a massive piss up in Cebu, and myself and Clancy joined them, and it was 1 day turned into 2 days into 3 days into 4, and I says to the barman, what's the story with this city? It's an awful shithole. And he said, well, no. I said, what's the story with the Philippines? It's an awful shithole. And he said, do you ever think maybe to get off the bar stool? Get off the bar stool, maybe go exploring? Because clearly, yeah, there's not much if you're just going to be sat in this bar all the time. So he gave me directions to go down to the ferry port. He took a ferry from Cebu over to Tagbilaran, and then from Tagbilaran you take a 30-minute taxi over to a place called Panglao. And when I got the Pangnao, I was directed down to a bar. And the bar was right on the beach. A place by the name of Birdwatchers, run by a man named Glenn. And Glenn would say to you, work away there. You can settle up with me once a week or once every 10 days. In other words, he'd run you a tab. And if you went up the road, if you ever found yourself in another bar, not that I did at the time, but if you went to another bar, the barman would say, you settle up with me at the end of the week, you're all right. So the difference between coming from Australia, where beers were $13, to a place where the barmen were saying, you can settle up with me at the end of the week. And then when I did settle up, the bar fine wouldn't be more than what it would cost to go out on one night in Melbourne. That's how much. So, like say Melbourne, you need about 300 Aussie dollars, about 150, $200. That was typically what that's how much I was spending. So I was spending about 10,000 to 15,000 a week drinking non-stop in this bar, and I did it for 6 months. And that was my first experience of the Philippines. Now, I've been back to Birdwatchers on many occasions, especially since I got sober. And some of the same people I met there 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, are still there today. Sitting on the same bar still, staring into the same bottle. Looking out at a beautiful, picturesque horizon, wondering what's it all about. And I'm not saying there's much of a difference between how I approach life at the moment and how they approach life. I would like to be sat on a bar stool, staring out at the horizon, drinking myself into oblivion. But the problem is that if I did that for one day, I'd have to do it for 2. And if I did it for 2, I'd have to do it for 3. And if I did it for 3, I'd have to do it for 4. And I'm not interested. Stick it up your bum, says he. So today I went to an AA meeting this morning. I won't tell you who was there because that will be breaking anonymity. I have said before, I want this podcast to be, I want it to have a flavour of recovery. You know, not necessarily 12-step recovery. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe some smart recovery thrown in. And then I want to talk sometimes about psychology. Some of the stuff that I'm reading and listening to. So every now and then you'll hear me talk about my meetings, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to Cebu. I have a few friends there in the meetings, and we shall see if we make it, because I might end up just end up camping out in San Carlos, or even getting a hotel in San Carlos. So the other option is I take a right and just go straight back down to Dumaguete. We shall see. All right, over and out. So there you are now. You can see San Carlos down there in the distance. I am maybe about a third of the way down through the windiest roads you can possibly imagine. I feel like I'm skiing again, except I'm not. I'm in a car. And I just have to watch it because there's lots of chickens and cats and dogs, and, you know, difficult enough. I don't want to hit any of them. Right, let's see what's around the corner. Go, go, go! Ah! Wow, look at that! Wow, look at that! Wow! So here we are on the 4th of April, and this guy here seems to be, he's in the boat fixing industry, but he's also in the cock rearing industry. He's figured out you can mash the two industries together. Are you keen on will I buy a cock? I'm all right for the cocks today, actually. Have you a boat? Have you a boat there you want me to fix? Good man yourself. I'll be around later on then to buy a cock, and sure, fuck it, you can fix my boat too. That's industrial. Anyway, the kids that you probably just saw there a second ago jumping into the water, I gave them 100 pesos, 250 peso notes. And the 4 kids that were jumping into the water on the video tried to explain that they should get the whole 100 pesos because they were the ones jumping into the water. And then the 2 other kids who had just finished their swim possibly weren't jumping in the water at all, certainly not for me and my camera. I handed them the 50 peso note to divide between the 2, but then the 4 that were jumping in the water, they couldn't divide the 50 peso equally. So ultimately, if there's 6 of them, they should be getting... Oh, here he is back now, look. So I sent that kid off, no shoes on his feet. He went off to get some change. Did you get the change? Now everybody has a bit of money. Are you happy now? Yes. Yeah. What will you buy with the money? You buy some sweets or some ice cream? Yes. Okay. Food. Maayong hapon. Okay. Bye bye. So small little things like that that make you feel better about yourself. 100 pesos is the equivalent to $2. So this is the Dumaguete boardwalk, and normally quite crowded at night. There will be, in a matter of hours, a whole heap of food stalls and second-hand clothes and little makeshift barbecue businesses. Will you have a bit of pork? Will you have a bit of pork barbecue on a stick? I'll throw in a bag of rice. So maybe I'll record some of that later on. What was I going to talk to about? Yeah, back to recovery then. There's a fella there who says to me, they're killing more people than they're curing. In other words, there'll be people at their rock bottom, let's say, and they come into the rooms for the first time and they hear a message, or what is the semblance of a message, but they're hearing nothing but distortion, and so there's nothing there for them. Sure, like, why would I want to come in here and listen to that shite? Away off I go. I'm going back out there to see a man about a dog. And then instead of Seeing a man about a dog, you see a man about a bag of drugs, and that bag of drugs turns into poison. Before you know it, you're pushing up daisies. So they're killing more people than they're curing. But sir, how do you change that? Statistically, rumour has it, let's say, that when the fellowship first came about back in 1937, and again when Jimmy Kay founded the Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship in 1954, statistically there was a success rate above the 50s, and now people would say that it's somewhere between 3 and 5. Well, I've heard 7%. 7% of the people who come into the fellowship at first stay clean and adopt the program. There's a whole lot of people relapsing, in and out, in and out. A lot of people would say, they're not working the steps. Sure, what do you expect if you're not working the steps? And then the fella that I was talking to says, it's got nothing to do with the steps. So they've got that much trauma. He was describing to me today his ex-partner, who didn't have a vein left in her body to inject with at the end of her days. She didn't have any veins. She'd blown all her veins. That's a chronic addict, if ever there was one. How much of a chance does that person have to get the program? What do they need to hear when they come into a meeting for the first time? In our literature it says there are such hopeless cases. I don't know. It's very easy to get a resentment. It's a beautiful day to be alive, and it's a beautiful day to be clean. I am connected in so many different ways. My home group is the International Marathon Meeting, the IOMMNA. And at any given time there's 100+ people speaking in there from all different corners of the world. Some people with multiple years clean time, and some people just in the door. Others again are chronic relapsers and just can't seem to do the right thing. But there's no reason why one person will keep on relapsing and another person wouldn't. If you say, well, this person is just not working the steps, oh, that's a very convenient answer to describe a very complex situation. Trauma-based recovery is a different approach to recovery altogether. You take Dr. Gabor Mate, who states that the problem is not one of addiction, it's rather the deep-seated trauma that people have experienced. Intergenerational trauma in some situations, where parents have been handed down parenting skills from their forefathers, and they do the best they can in the moment, and their children grow up, but the same habit persists. The granddad was an alcoholic, dad was an alcoholic, and now I'm an alcoholic. Well, what's that say about it? How are you going to be able to shake this thing? It's been passing down through the years, from generation to generation. There is but one answer: abstinence. Well, the same fellow would say that there's plenty of different answers. Moderation, smart recovery is another way that people approach it. If you practice abstinence for the first 30 days and then, in accordance with the smart process, you begin to drink like a normal person, and that actually works for some people. We are not all hopeless cases. We are all very different. It's not one size fits all. Anyway, So I'm on the end of the trip now, half an hour outside of Bacolod and 20 minutes on the far end of a town called Hinigaran. I just saw the sun go down, decided to stop for a little bit of reverence. I'm right beside the highway though, so you hear a lot of traffic. You know, I often describe to people this feeling I have sometimes that I just want to get up and go. Be it a bike, plane, bus or a car. And would I be going to Thailand? Would I be going to Bali? Would I be going to Cambodia? I'm forever looking at the cost of the flights, and then I'll picture myself on a 2-week holiday in one of those places, and I'll make the excuse, I'll say there's something building up inside of me and I need to go and explore. See some people down there enjoying the same sunset I'm enjoying, snapping pictures. You can be sure they're not like me on their internet trying to find out the prices of flights. I think I'll go to Bangkok for 2 weeks. I think I'll go to Bali. A friend of mine asked me would I go to the Bali convention in June, and there's a 50-50 to be honest. It's a easier justification for me because I can say at least then I'm putting my recovery first. Anyway, this year I haven't gone on many trips, and if I have gone on any trip, it's just been on my doorstep. So in the last few days I've been in Malbal, I've been to down to Dumaguete, and now I'm on the back into Bacolod, and it will serve me well, I think, and keep the itch away for at least another week or two. I often feel like I'm getting more value for time if I take these little breaks. It feels like I achieve a lot more. Like in 2024, I was in Bali for the convention. I was in Chiang Mai for the convention. When I say convention, I mean conventions, because the AA convention is on a week before the NA convention. So I went to 5 conventions altogether last year. One of them was in Cebu. Anyway, that's it from this little video. Over and out.